Days of Future Past, Apocalypse, Deadpool, X-Men. They're all in the same universe, says producer Simon Kinberg. The rest of us say, what? I'm Alicia Malone, and this is ScreenJunkies News. In an interview with Deadline yesterday, writer-producer, maybe someday director Simon Kinberg spoke about the future of the X-Men universe, assuring the world that all of their X-Men films are somehow connected. If we take him at his word, the implication here is that everything from Magneto at the Statue of Liberty to Apocalypse decimating half of the world's population to Deadpool breaking the fourth wall is all still somehow in the same universe. As Kinberg says in his interview, there is a larger architecture to tell these stories in. He then goes on to say that there is a plan for how these movies can connect and be part of a larger narrative, and it will be interesting to see how we marry the different tones. But he cautions that they will only do this when it organically makes sense. Here to tell us how any connectivity is even possible is Dan Murrell and Roth Cornet. Hey guys.
Hello.
I love all the pieces of paper that we're trying to figuring it all out.
This is like Homeland in here.
It's really confusing.
Well, just put one thing to rest. This will never organically make sense.
No.
None of this will ever organically make sense.
None of it makes sense. And over on social, we have Victor Torres.
Howdy.
How's
Ready
it going?
for my head to explode.
Yeah, you're lucky you've got Google.
Yeah.
Because
thank
I'm
God.
going to need help with this.
Yeah, we're
I'm
going to
here.
need to Google some things.
All right, before we get into it, Roth, you have an idea for what could possibly happen or what might work?
Well, I think this is the only way. Well, first of all, we're going to get into our proposals for how the timeline actually works. To me, Deadpool is...
Who's that in the middle? It's Deadpool?
This is Deadpool. I've given him an emotional life. He's smiling under the mask.
Nice.
And he's giving us the finger because he's sassy like that. But
he's got the katanas.
He's got the katanas.
Nice.
So I
He's
feel
naked.
like he's also naked because that's how Deadpool do.
What does it say at the start? Kills.
So this is what he does. Okay. So this is how we make it work. First of all, in Deadpool 2, he comes out for a full 5 minutes to camera with a whiteboard behind him and explains the continuity of the X-Men universe. And that's how they get it explained to us in a fun and amusing manner, but and in a way that actually makes sense. But I feel like because he can jump into different realities, Deadpool can.
Yeah.
He can go ahead. We just we keep the rights to the Fantastic Four because this was a pitch from a colleague of ours, Drew McQueenie, who said he should just call the movie Deadpool Kills the Fantastic Four, and in the first 5 minutes he kills the Fantastic Four, and then they're gone, and that's it. And so that's connecting him to the Fantastic Four, and then he can jump into different realities and actually kill the creators and the writers of other movies before they actually were able to make the movie.
Gosh.
They just get wiped off the map.
I forgot about Fantastic Four with all this as well.
He has to kill himself in X-Men, in Wolverine, because a different Deadpool existed.
Oh, gosh.
Yes.
This is making my head explode.
He has to suicide.
Dan, you have been working away.
So
what have you come up
here's
with?
where I started with.
Okay.
I call this
Dan's
the A
actually got a real
timeline,
plan.
aka the darkest timeline.
This is how it could
Now,
possibly work.
this is how the original continuity works. You have X-Men First Class here, right, with our first introduction, right?
Yes.
Then you have the beginning of Days of Future Past up until the time that Logan time warps into his own head, right?
Yes.
Now, ignoring what's about to happen, then you have X-Men Origins Wolverine, you have X-Men X2, The Last Stand, The Wolverine, and then the end part of Days of Future Past where there's like they go to get him. They go to the recruit Wolverine, old Charles and old Magneto. That's the A timeline. Now, what you have to do is you have to draw an arrow back from this Days of Future Past in the future to where Wolverine goes back in the past, right? So now we've gone from the end of the A timeline back to the beginning.
Yes.
So here's what we do.
Oh my God.
Then, and credit to, I need to give credit to Christopher Lloyd. I'm going to do a Doc Brown here. We skew into this tangent. The B timeline. Now, the B timeline is where they change history. So we have Sentinels coming in early. We got Nixon, all that stuff. So we have Days of Future Past. And then we have X-Men Apocalypse, right?
Which of these timelines does La La Land actually win the Academy Award?
That would be the C timeline. We have Supernova and whatever comes forward, right? So we have that. That's the new. This is the new X-Men timeline.
I think we're gonna run into trouble at Supernova, but I keep going.
Sure. So here are the two outliers, right? And this is disregarding so many so many continuity errors that were made in general. We'll get to those. But we have 2 outliers here, right? We have Deadpool and we have Logan.
Yes.
Right? So these are, where do these 2 fit? So we have the A timeline and the B timeline.
Because Logan's in the future.
Logan is in the future. Now, what they're saying is that Logan, technically, because there is no Sentinel destruction, we know it's not in the future of the A timeline.
Well,
because if Logan was in this future, this would be a post-apocalyptic future where all of the robots have wiped out everybody.
Yes.
However, they make reference to the Statue of Liberty, Charles Xavier, in Logan.
So he was
which happened in this timeline, and probably wouldn't happen in this timeline because Magneto was in a totally different place.
Okay, but it also makes sense for... none of this makes sense, but it also could make sense for Logan to take place in after Apocalypse, and the reason is because Apocalypse destroys half the world.
Sure.
It doesn't really make any sense for Deadpool to exist after Apocalypse because half the world... If you guys think about how easy an economy is, like it is to crumble the economy and for the economy to take a hit, just one small event, the economy will take a hit because people will lose confidence. Half the world destroyed, it would become a dystopian reality for 30, 40 years to come. It would take forever to recover from that. So to me, Logan is in the Apocalypse timeline.
Do you want to say mine?
Right.
But what do you think?
Well, I there's so much to go into. I'm curious. I want to know if there's a workaround here before I go into the rabbit hole.
Mine is just... What? That's
X-Men
me
what?
just going, huh? And my head is exploding. Because none of this really makes sense to me, and I don't think that it should. Is this something you'd want to see, Dan?
This doesn't make sense, and it will never make sense. I'm just trying to play devil's advocate for Simon Kinberg here. So
Okay. I'm loving Dan's theorizing personally. This is amazing to me. But let me ask you a question. I'm going to throw a wrench in.
Okay.
First of all, we have to think about how average audiences are actually responding to any of this. But Emma Frost.
Yes.
When is she born? Because that's a big question because she's an adult in first class, but I believe, and correct me fact checker, she's a child in
Wolverine Origins.
Right, Wolverine Origins. So again, that brings me back to Deadpool. Went back and killed people before it could even happen.
Well, you have the Emma Frost paradox. You also have the Sabertooth paradox. I've gone back and looked at X-Men, and I feel like there's definitely enmity there between. So I'm going to go with recasting there. I'm going to go with keeping in mind that Wolverine lost his memory, so he wouldn't necessarily remember who Sabertooth was in the first X-Men movie because he had total amnesia. So I'm going to give him a pass there. The thing that's really sticky here is Logan. Where if Logan is in the B timeline, how are they referencing events that probably didn't happen here in the A timeline? Here's my theory.
Okay.
Slight spoiler for Logan here. Professor X is losing control of his mental faculties, correct? He's a loose cannon. Now, if we're going by the Star Trek theory that there are multiple timelines that can be coexisting simultaneously, a multiverse, if you will. What if Professor X, in losing his grip on reality, is able to perceive multiple timelines so that he does remember things from this timeline that didn't happen in this timeline. So that's why he remembers things that happened here that didn't necessarily happen here.
Maybe that's why he went crazy.
Maybe it is.
So many realities.
I'm going to also propose a Battlestar Galactica reality in which you spend several years, which is an amazing series if you haven't watched it. I would encourage you heavily to do so, especially 2.5, the new Caprica storyline. They tell us there is a plan repeatedly, and then I become very convinced, as Simon Kinberg has now told us, and then I become very convinced by the end of the series that there was no plan.
The Cylons did not have a plan.
The Cylons did not have a plan. What was the plan?
They had no plan.
What was the plan?
I don't know what the plan was.
So what's the plan here? I mean, let me ask you, Alicia.
Okay.
Do you think that an average audience member in truth wants to...
I don't think anyone remembers what characters are where or what the timeline is. And if we're having so much trouble trying to figure it out and we do this for a living, the audiences are not going to catch up. My question is this a rights issue? Do they have to use the characters? Or should they just keep going forward with these more standalone adventures like Deadpool and Logan, which have been both huge hits?
Massive hits, and that rely absolutely not at all on the original chronology. The chronology of the X-Men has been a thorn in their side even before they skewed off. There were inconsistencies with character. There were inconsistencies with age. It's been a mess. I mean, taking aside my futile attempts to make this all make sense. Like I said, I'm playing devil's advocate here, but there was no plan in any of these movies. Wolverine loses his adamantium at the end of the Wolverine, and he's got bone claws again. By the time Days of Future Past comes back, he has no adamantium. He has the adamantium back in his skeleton. With no attempt to explain what exactly happened.
Days of Future Past was actually really smart, and then they ruined that kind of with
Days of Future Past wiped the slate clean. But again, there are little things like at the end of Days of Future Past, Wolverine gets captured by Stryker, but it's not Stryker, it's Mystique. So they're doing something different with Wolverine. When we get to Apocalypse, Wolverine is in the Weapon X program, so they set up doing something different, but the real Stryker is there, and he's still running the Weapon X program.
So you have to assume that Mystique is just really terrible at saving people.
Or there's really no thought put into this at all.
Yeah, and there is, I think, for me, there is sort of a Mystique question where, besides the fact that there are continuity issues, there's a character. There's just how she behaves. If you look at Mystique, the Jennifer Lawrence Mystique versus the Rebecca Romijn Mystique, they're totally incongruous. They just do not work together. Because if you're looking at this woman, by the end, she becomes this anti-hero, right? And it's because Jennifer Lawrence had the star power, and they wanted to create a more interesting character for her. But then she is Magneto's henchman when it's the Rebecca Romijn Mystique, and she is 100% team. There's no sense of conflict at all around Charles. Why did that just go away? Was her brain wiped? These are deep-seated emotions, like the kind that Deadpool has.
Right. Deadpool, I think, exists in a pocket universe.
Well, he should,
because he understands and knows. He references how confusing the X-Men timelines are. He has an action figure of the original Deadpool. I think Deadpool, if they're smart, and they're not, so this is not what they're going to do, Deadpool should never connect to anything else that we see. But they like money, so they're not going to do that.
And X-Force is coming, right?
Yeah, and X-Force is coming, which should be its own timeline.
Yeah, do you think that can continue its own timeline?
It should be its own thing.
Yeah,
it should not connect at all.
Deadpool and Cable are both going to be in X-Force, which makes sense if you look at in terms of the source material, but it starts to get very confusing when you look at these movie universes, and then New Mutants is coming, supposedly.
Does everything have to connect? That's my issue.
No.
Nothing has to be a super cinematic universe. It can just be standalone adventures, right?
Yeah. The more time and money that you put into making something connect, particularly when you're making a movie that you don't intend to connect to a larger universe, all you're creating is inconsistencies.
Although I do like that it has inspired this from Dan, and I do want to keep returning to it as you connect the dots here. But look, arguably speaking, the two most successful, not arguably, factually speaking, the two most successful X-Men movies of the last number of years were Deadpool and certainly Logan. Yeah. Both very different movies, both great, both completely willing to do their own thing, to tell their own story, to honor those characters. Does not need to, they connect loosely, of course.
Yeah, well, Days of Future Past did really well. But
I'm not talking about financially, I'm talking about aesthetically, creatively successful. These critically successful. These two are far more successful. And Deadpool did very well financially.
No, Deadpool did great financially. I think it is the top grossing X-Men movie of all time, which is funny because there's one X-Men in it.
Yeah. There's
Colossus.
It's and I guess Negasonic. Anyway,
I don't know.
She was wearing an outfit.
Yeah, she's got a whole other backstory. I think.
Yeah, she does. Which is that's the whole other thing. Is that's the point. It didn't matter. They didn't have to go for big characters in this movie to sell
with
it.
Origin stories. Yeah. They could just do it.
Yeah, it's Simon Kinberg. I feel like he inherited a mess. And he's trying to do the best that he can, but trying to connect all of these in the same universe is not going to work. Just because there are too many moving pieces, there's too many inconsistencies, there are too many dead ends and turned around things that it's just not going to work. And it doesn't have to. I don't think the fans out there are clamoring for a solution to Days of Future Past was that solution. That was to the fans saying like, okay, we're gonna wipe out The Last Stand and what happened with Jean Grey and give you some resolution to that, and we're gonna start a new universe now with new stories. But they immediately kind of stepped in it and brought it. Now we're doing the Phoenix again, and
but we've done the Phoenix now.
Right, we've done the Phoenix now, and already there are inconsistencies piling up. So I just connecting these all together is not the right way to go, and I think that Logan and Deadpool are kind of proof of that. We want new, we want original, we want different. We don't want 8 million ways to try to. These diagrams, like no movie series should have a diagram like this.
But
this
it
is crazy.
should have a diagram like this.
That's crazy.
I'm still confused. Victor, help me out. We asked Twitter about how to explain the continuity. What do people say?
It seems like everyone is just as confused as all of us. Everyone's trying to make sense of it. Occasionally, someone will throw up a timeline, and then someone's like, "Wait a second, though he mentions X or he mentions the Statue of Liberty." Yeah. I think that your B timeline and your way of making sense of it does make sense if Professor X is capable of perceiving multiple timelines. I think that's the only thing that has made sense so far. I've been trying to find like holes in it. Every single timeline I come across, there's a little disclaimer under it that's like, but it doesn't account for A, B, C discontinuities. Right. Deadpool does, I'm assuming you were referencing, Deadpool does kill the Marvel Universe, including the Marvel writers and artists, which would be awesome.
It makes sense, people, because this is actually what Deadpool do. He goes and he kills everybody. He resets Marvel. He can do this, and it actually makes sense for the character. He can do these things. Yeah, He's our answer. Deadpool, he just has to self-Deadpool seppuku.
Deadpool's the key.
In Wolverine.
But yeah, just mostly confusion. No one really is making any sense of it. We're all just waiting for Bob Newhart to wake up.
Thank you so much.
Who made the Newhart reference?
I did.
Nice. Oh, shout out to Victor. That was awesome.
Victor Torres, Dan Murrell, Roth Cornet, thank you for getting me through that.
No, we haven't helped at all.
You tried.
Dan did a pretty solid job.
Yeah.
I'm trying my best. I'm going to go back to my laboratory and connect a bunch of yarn and string to a bunch of thumbtacks, and I'll try to make sense of this.
If the X-Men gives us this from Dan, I actually have to thank them.
Well, we want to know what you guys think. Let us know in the comments below. Do you see a possible solution to this timeline? Is that something you even want to see? Don't forget to subscribe, like, and also follow us on SJ News. Over here is where you can see more of our good stuff. And I'll see you soon.